Okay, so one of the things I wanted to go over here quickly is just starting and stopping Node-RED and having it run as a service. So basically what I've done here is you can see I entered the command Node-RED start right here, and so that starts Node-RED. It's going to tell you where to point the browser. Sometimes I've noticed that, like if, for instance, sometimes I've noticed that, it'll show here 192.168.220.79. Now this is, the reason that it's this IP is because the Moxa has two IPs, and it's connected to the internet right now, and this is the IP that's connected to that, wide area network. It appears that despite it showing this, you can also just type in 10.10.10.1 and that'll work. And so I'm on there right now. If I were to type in the IP that it's showing, it should also work as well. Now, when you hit Node-RED start, it's going to come up with this stuff, and it takes a few minutes. It loads the palettes, it does all this stuff, and it gets going here. It warns us that projects is disabled. That's what I was speaking about before in a previous video about enabling projects, but that's okay. It's still all good. It works. Anyway, so it shows here that it started. Now, sometimes, so when it does crash, like when you have done things incorrectly, and like we talked about previously, and it crashes, when you hit start, it'll do this, what it's done here basically, and then it'll go Node-RED stopped, and then it'll go Node-RED started again or whatever, and it just kind of keeps looping through, and it keeps trying to start it. So you probably want to stop that. Anyway, to exit this, you just press Control-Z. Now, it's still running. So even though you press Control-Z, it's still running. It's still fully operable here. If you wanted to stop it, you just do Node-RED stop. And that will stop it. And I've included that in the documentation in here, right here. The other thing is that if you want to enable it as a service or disable it as a service, you can enter these commands. Now, what a service means, it just means that Node-RED is going to run on startup. So when the Moxa is booted up, Node-RED should automatically run. I have it disabled right now, so we can enable that. That way, when we start up the Moxa, it will just automatically work. Now, I copied it. I right-clicked to paste. Boom. And there we go. So it should be running as a service now. So it should always start up automatically. One of the things that I found is if you do have bugs and it's crashing, it may help to stop it and disable the service. Because I think that way it's you make sure it's actually stopped and it's not still trying to do stuff. So anyway, so that's that. Now we've gone through the read coils, we've gone through write, we've gone through the read floats and the write floats. I talked a little bit about what I was trying to do here, and whatnot. I kind of feel like maybe it's best to go through this master because it's the same stuff here, but I think it'll make more sense if I go through it on here maybe, because you can actually see a lot of these are connected within the program. So if you click on it, you get this line here and you see where it's connected to. Now I just did this to limit the amount of these wires, kind of going all over the place. I just thought that was a little bit easier to see, easier to read. You can click on it and see the wire if you want to. Makes a little bit more sense. Last time I believe, so I left off kind of talking about this down here, and how that works. And basically it's simple. All you're trying to do here is you're trying to read from the SCADA pack. You're trying to take what you've read from the SCADA pack and then perform some logic on it. So if you want to perform logic on the values in the SCADA pack, you got to read them first, right? So you read them, you perform some logic, and then you write. And it's about that simple. The logic is contained in here, this toggle coils. Now I wrote this logic, basically it's pretty simple here. Basically what it's doing is I gave it a name, like a topic here. And so what it's doing is it's taking the payload that's coming in here. Now this is going from, it's coming out over here, right here. So, or it should be. It might be this one actually. No. Wait a second. Just double check that. Double click on this guy. Okay, it's not actually connected to anything right now because I disconnected some stuff when I was playing around with the Modbus master. But basically, I believe that this is the one we would want to connect to, and I'll just double check that. That should be this one. Yeah. So now these are connected. So essentially, like we talked about before, when you hit this triggers a read, then there's a delay. Just as we talked about before, you need a delay so that things are performed in the right order. And then this is going to notify the read function right here that this button has been pressed and not this guy up here, right? So it's going to send in an empty string. And we're splitting these payloads and then we're combining them. And now basically what we're going to have is we're going to have that hierarchy. We're going to have these different payloads, or sorry, one payload, but it's going to combine all the other payloads from before. And so that one payload now is going to have these different values in it. So what I've done is basically this is injecting a null string from here, like an empty string from here, and it's coming in and it gets combined into this payload with all this other stuff coming out of here. In this function now, basically what's happening is we're saying, okay, the payload message.payload.read-write. Now the read-write is coming from here. That's the topic that I gave this. See, I gave it the topic read-write. So basically, go back again. Now we're saying, okay, if message.payload.read-write, and so this is, okay, this read-write is the topic in here. It's actually the topic that's being sent here, not the payload. But what happened was, if you look at these, I combined them by topic. So it's basically it's combining them by topic, and this is just an end of line character. It's just saying, but we're actually not even using this, so you don't even need to worry, because we're not sending in strings or buffers or arrays. We're sending objects in. Objects are coming out of here, they're coming out of here, and they're going into here. And we're sending a message for each key value pair, and we're copying the key to the message.topic. And then here, it's combining each payload to create a key value object using the value of message.topic as the key. So kind of confusing a little bit, but if you put some debug nodes there, you will see what it's doing. And I won't get into that because the videos are starting to get pretty long. But if you put some debug nodes there and start hitting buttons, you will see what it's doing. And it works, and it's doing the correct thing that we want it to. And so here, and remember, you can put a debug node here, right? And you can see, okay, what's the payload, or you can put it here. And you can see, okay, what's coming out of here, what's going into here. You can make this in a complete message object like this, and you can see the entire object. And then you can go over here to your debug messages, and you can view the hierarchy, and you can go, okay, what I want to read is, in this case, message.payload.readWrite. So this message.payload.readWrite is this empty string that's coming from here. It's a part of the object. It's a part of the payload, because the payload has now been combined, right? So the payload's now combined. We've got the read-write, we've got a read, and whatever. So now basically what we're saying, what we're doing here is, if that read-write is not undefined, it's not equal to undefined, meaning it has come in here, then we want to take the data, put it in a message payload, because the data is what's being read here, and then we want to send that message, and that message gets sent out of here into here, and then it gets toggled and wrote. And I think that that's pretty clear to understand, right? Basically, if this button was not pressed, okay, and only this button was pressed, then when it comes here, it's going to go, okay, it is undefined. So else, we're just going to return null, so nothing. It's not going to send anything out here. It's just returning nothing. So that's that, basically. I think anybody should be able to understand that. I believe that's pretty clear, right? If that button has been pressed, then send it to the toggle function, basically. Otherwise, this button's been pressed, then we just return null. And I think you can see that's why we've combined them into one payload and yada yada. Now, the reason here we take message.payload.data is because we don't want to send, we don't need to send message.payload.readWrite or message.payload.buffer or message.payload.whatever is in that object. We just want to send the message.payload.data, because again, if you placed a debug node here and you looked at it, what's coming out, the data is what's been read from here. That's just the array of coils that we've read. So we just want, what we do is we take that and we're placing it in this function node's payload. So we're taking the payload, message.payload.data, that's coming out of this yellow node and coming into here, and we're setting it equal to this guy's payload here. And then we're sending it. And in previous examples with functions, we've used this return message. Now, we don't use return message here. We use node.send message. And the reason we do this is because we've performed some type of asynchronous logic. And when you've done that in Node-RED in this JavaScript programming, when you've performed asynchronous actions, you have to use node.send. Otherwise, it won't work properly. If you just used return message, it doesn't work, because it doesn't. It basically returns the message but doesn't perform this stuff on it. So anyway, so that's that. Now, the other thing here is basically, and all this is down here, it's the exact same thing. It's the exact same thing. It's just instead this is coming from or this is going to the Modbus master. So it's literally the same thing. It's just I have utilized this read coils flow in here for the same reason, for the exact same reason. But this though is actually writing coils on the server, whereas this is writing coils in the SCADA pack. So yeah. So this guy, exact same thing. You can go through it. You can look at it. This is connected to the Modbus master. It's the same thing as what I just showed you. But again, it's going to write values to the server. So it's going to read values. It's reading values from the SCADA pack. Okay. It's reading values from the SCADA pack. This comes down here. Boom. Does the exact same thing. Comes in here. And then based on what was read in the SCADA pack, it is toggling these values in the server. Okay, and the server is like what we're going to use to communicate with SIGNet, because SIGNet, as we've already proved using Modbus, just a piece of software that Riley showed me. We've proved that we can write to this server from something within our local network. It doesn't have to be on the computer I'm using or anything like that. It's just anything within the local network can also like write to this. And so it's just going to act as like an emulator to turn the Moxa essentially into a Modbus slave to be able to receive data from SIGNet. So, for instance, the only reason I really did this is say maybe SIGNet is going to pull some data or whatever. Who knows? Maybe SIGNet needs that data. It's going to send it elsewhere. I don't know. But basically, this is going to read the values in the SCADA pack, toggle them, write them to the server. Then SCADA can read the toggled values from the server or whatever. And this might not be used, but at least, it's just to show that, okay, we can do that as well. Right, and I think it gives you a lot of ideas as to what's possible and whatnot. Now, the other thing is basically, okay, these guys here, what I've done is if you look at this and the node information, basically what this guy does is it waits until it's received 3 message parts. That's because there's 2 messages that come out of here and 1 that comes out of here. This right here, it is splitting the messages. So it splits this by payload, and there's 2 different values. I think there's like the data and then something else, the buffer or whatever. And so this is split into 2, and this is just 1, split into 1. And then they're combined here. But this guy, it won't send anything to this function until it's received 3 message parts. Okay, so it's got to receive 3 messages back to back before it will send a message. So what I did is in the event that, say, you press this button and it triggers this, right? Well, it's going to send data to here, but it's also going to send data to here. Now, when we're wanting to read from read from the SCADA pack and then write to the SCADA pack, we don't want this one, right? We don't want this to be activated, but it's sending that data here anyway. So essentially, what I've done is when this is pressed, if you go over here, it comes here. That's all fine and dandy. But what I've done is essentially here. Actually, maybe I didn't. No, I didn't do. Wait. Or did I? Read coils. I might not have done this on this one. I might not have gotten to that point yet, because I did do it on the Modbus master. Probably should have started with that, like I said I was going to. But let's see here. So this one goes to the Modbus master. The idea. Okay, here I'm going to explain this in a different way, just because it's not connected to write coils. So this is the way I'm going to explain it. Okay, so if you press this button here, now this is going to send data out both to this, and it's going to send data down to here to this one. But when you press this, your intention is to read from the SCADA pack, not write to the server, right? So what I've done is when you press this, it also goes down here and triggers this. Now what this does is we set a topic. I just called it that, refresh join node, and I'm refreshing the join node. This is the join node right here, and but what I'm doing is I'm taking the there's a property in the join node that is called msg.complete. It's just a property called complete, and if you set it equal to true, basically what it does is it sends it. It sends a return value, or it tells it that it's done. It's finished doing what it's doing. So what that does for us is it clears whatever could be left in here. Like maybe, let's say, because maybe it's waiting for 3 messages, right? But it only gets 1 or it only gets 2. Well, then it's not gonna, whatever is in there, the 1 or 2, is just gonna remain in there. It's gonna like stay in there waiting for a 3rd one to come. So what I've done is when you hit this and you just want to read, well, it triggers this read, right? And it decides, okay, we're gonna read, and that's great. And then when you press this, it also triggers this guy. And this sends a message.complete equals true down to this, which tells this thing to basically reset. If you look here, it says send the message after this or this, and it also says or if a message with the message.complete property is set. And yeah, okay, so now I believe when I was testing this, let's see here, I think that oh yeah, so right, okay, so it sends it, right? It sends it, and it whatever it received, whether it's 1 value or 2 value or 3 value or whatever, it's going to send it regardless because this has sent that dot complete. Sorry, I've repeated myself like 5 times, but I'm reassuring myself. But okay, then it goes into here, right? And because this wasn't pressed, there's no null string going in here. There's no empty string going in here. So it returns null, and then we're good. We're empty. We're clear. Because this returns nothing, and this has emptied itself. It's sent the message. It's not waiting for anything else. Now it's the same thing. This is connected to Modbus master, and when it's triggered, it's going to trigger this here, but it's also going to trigger this message.complete equals true, and this is going to trigger this one up here, because in this situation we've pressed whatever is connected to here. We haven't pressed this, but this, if you look, is also or did I not? What the heck? This should be connected to a read. But it is, I think. Yeah, it's connected to a read on a different, on this flow here. So, notify. This is write from coils, split message. Got it, right, okay. So, let's see here. Copy coils. Okay, read Modbus server and toggle the values in it. Oh, somebody's at my door here. I think I'm just gonna have to take this and then I'll restart the video. So my apologies.